Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for our 8th online wine tasting and our first with a prestigious international winemaker to join us on this. We are tasting Argentina as by popular demand. Now I'm going to talk about my own personal experience with Argentina. I am clearly not the expert here on Argentina. I just run a little wine shop here. We have someone much better informed than me, so I'll let him do most of the introduction on this. But when I started here, we started with 2 Argentine wines on the shelf. One was a Weinert and one was a Luigi Bosca, and neither of them sold very well. They were, you know, pretty typical early stages Argentine wines for us. Like, they were very oaky, they tend to be aged a long time, and they tend to be very, very soft and very Spanish inspired. It wasn't until about 5 years ago, when Argentina absolutely exploded on us, that we really saw the momentum, the potential that we could get out of Argentina and out of the Malbec grape in general. Now, when we talk about Malbec, when we talk about Malbec, we're talking about Argentina. When we're talking about Argentina, we end up talking about Malbec. But there are so many other grapes that are really, really famous from there. They actually were originally known for a lot of pink skin grapes that we don't really see as an export product too much. I'm going to just throw this over to our guest at this point. Mauro, can you hear me? Hey, so I want to welcome our guest this evening, Mauro Villarejo from Finca Trapezio and Bobo Wines. We have 3 of his wines tonight. It's an absolute pleasure having you join us. Thank you very much for doing this. Hey, you know what? It's a lot of fun. We've sold a lot of Trapezio here tonight. We have 74 people joining us, so 74 kits. A lot of these are couples, so we could have close to 150 people joining us for this. So it's going to be a fun night. Don't get stage fright on me now. Aaron, I've lost my audio.
Can you hear him?
I can just barely hear you, Mauro. I think we had a little bit of a cutout there. Can we try that one more time? Just speak up a bit. I can see you, and now I can hear you much better. I think it was just a momentary. I mean, we're dealing with the vagaries of, you know, the internet across the world, but we've got you now. Hey, we got one more. We now have 2 guests. Hello, welcome. Hello, I'm really, really well. So Marcelo, introduce yourself as well.
Sorry, I have to stop. Can you riff? I got to figure out the audio for Skype. They have no audio on the guests.
All right. So I've been sorry, guys. I've been informed by Aaron that we don't have audio on our guests just yet. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the order here for the folks at home. We are going to do the Trapezio Malbec in the Vineyard Selection Series, followed by the Cabernet Sauvignon, and then finally the Finca Trapezio, and then we will wrap up with the Doriguti, which is not one of these wines, but we've been a little bit of a victim of our own success. We have about 70 people joining us for these days, and of the 4th wine we wanted to do in the whole province, there was only about 24 to 30 bottles left. So we are we're really excited to be able to do that. Now, we are experiencing some mild technical difficulties, in the sense that it's extreme technical difficulties, but that's all right. We will have them back in a moment. So we are going to just jump right into the first wine with the Trapezio Malbec. Now, I do apologize for the fact that we are having a little bit of difficulty with our guests, but you know, such is the vagaries of trying to do a live broadcast with folks in Argentina on our very first try. So we are working on that. Okay, and I can hear Mauro, even if you can't. So if you have questions, until we get this fixed, I'll be able to relay them to him. I do apologize for this, Mauro. Why don't you tell me a little bit about this one? Because I'll tell you what it says to me. Like, I get really, really nice, bright primary fruit. I'm getting a touch of oak on this, but I really appreciate right off the hop that the alcohol is appropriate on this, and it seems to have been harvested at actual appropriate ripeness. For a while there, when Argentinian wine was, if it said Malbec for us, just people would line up to buy it. This would have been about 2016. And I noticed the alcohol creeping up higher and higher and higher towards 14.5 and even up to 15. And those wines were just out of balance. I really appreciate the balance on this wine. Mauro's asking how much time we have. We have as much time as you'll give us, and we are to a certain point trying to fill time until we get the audio working. How's that coming, Aaron? I got a cautious thumbs up.
Asking us to do some Malbec. So at the end we had to work on this kind of entry-level Malbecs, and then we develop it. So everything you said about the wine is correct. I appreciate it, and as you said it, it's perfect description. It is something good to hear it because it's what we try to do in this product. So we try to do a very typical varietal with the typicity of our Malbec, fresh, easy to drink, and a wine to invite that after you drink it, you drink a cup, then it invites you to drink another one and another one until you finish the bottle. So
I think all of our guests now have audio, so everybody heard at least most of that, I think. Right at the start, Marcello, I think a lot of people missed, you said that you didn't actually take grapes and refused to make straight Malbecs for the first 7 years. Tell me about that. Why did you not want to jump straight into varietal Malbecs? Was it a desire to kind of let the field or let the vineyards tell you what they wanted to make?
Well, at the beginning of the project, it was my cousin Mauro with his partner François Passaga, French, trying to make some kind of chateau in Agrelo, in Mendoza. So the early philosophy of wine was to perform blends. That's why at the beginning we didn't pay attention to do what everybody else was doing, which is Malbec, as this. So at the beginning we made Malbec, we blended it with Cabernet Franc or Cabernet Sauvignon, and we're learning to do our own style of wine, which is the line Bobo.
Yeah, and the Bobo wines are still blends for the most part. I don't think there's a straight wine in there. I think it's all blends, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about the
that,
primary.
We were learning that our customers were asking us to develop an entry-level, varietal level Malbec, Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir. So at the end, we put our hands on that and developed this line, which is for us even more difficult to do in this level of price. It is for us a bigger issue. It's more difficult to prepare it than to do Bobo wine.
It's something I hear from a lot of winemakers. It's so easy to make a wine that you're going to sell for $100 a bottle because you really don't have a huge amount of budget. But to make something that's going to be on the shelf for under $20 here, it requires so much care and so much attention and so much just difficulty in trying to coax out the most that the grape can show you without having to bury it in American oak or to really go with all the little fixes that you can do. You have to really make good wine as a foundation. Now, I had a question, and I'll let you handle this one, Marcello. I'd started out talking about appropriate alcohol levels and ripeness in wines, and that your wines were down closer to 13 or 13.5, then up at 14.5. The question we got from one of our viewers is, how do you end up with a wine that is up at that 14.5, and why is it either desirable or undesirable, and why isn't that your wine-making philosophy?
Okay, well, sometimes nature brings us the wine. I mean, we try to perform something, and sometimes nature do other things. But usually, what we try to do is to work in the vineyard to develop the product from the vineyard. I mean, if you try to make this, I think you are with, I don't know if you can see this bottle.
We can see you just fine.
Okay, it moves different than I want. Well, this one.
Yeah.
with Malbec. When we think about developing this wine, we think of a very easy to drink wine. So alcohol doesn't have to go very high. So the work is in the vineyard. You work with how much grapes you leave per plant, how much wetting you put to the ground. We try to keep the soil covered with green, with plants. We don't eradicate the plants under the vineyard. So with these things, we try to lower the temperature of the vineyard. So the grapes can mature at a lower rate and produce lower as sugar. So we have lower alcohol after that.
Beautiful.
I don't know if the point was clear, but we try to work from the vineyard to reach this alcohol. Sometimes we can do it on 13 grades, sometimes 13.5. Maybe one very hot year, we could have a little more alcohol, but it's something we look for with the vineyard work.
I've got a couple of questions for you. It's a two-parter. First, I'll ask you initially to describe this wine, your idea when you were making it, what you wanted to achieve, and how you think it fills that. And the second question is from one of our viewers. He wants to know what you can tell us about the soil and topography of your vineyards and how that impacts the fruit that's produced.
Okay, great. Well, the first point, it was something about how we think this wine. No?
Yeah. What was your concept for this one? What were you aiming for, and how do you think you fulfilled those goals with this wine? What do you like about it? Brag about your creation.
Right. Well, we began, as I told you, we began working on Bobo wines, thought for a blend. But even in that time, we liked wines with good acidity, with very good fresh fruit. So we tried to move those concepts down to this level, to this kind of wine. So we thought about a wine with lower alcohol, with not a big, huge black color. We don't need that. We needed a bright color, leaf color, only that, but not too black. And with the smell and mouth of a wine that invites you to drink the whole bottle. So it must keep the varietal characteristics, the Malbec, typical Malbec. Must keep good acidity in mouth, and not a very great structure of tannins. I mean, some round tannins to keep the wine going on, and especially good acidity. So thinking of all of that, we work on the vineyard, and then we develop a different kind of protocol of fermentation in the winery to keep what we achieved in the vineyard. And regarding the second question, they are linked somehow, because the climate and the soil we have in our area, in Mendoza, in Luján, determines how to work to reach that fruit. I mean, in our vineyards, we have mostly, how do you say, clay on the soil. And clay helps us, especially in hot weather, or especially in hot years like this one, for instance, to keep a lot of water in the soil. Differently from sand. Sand would drain the water very quickly, and the plant will be stressed, have hydrical stress. So in the opposite, our land keeps a lot of water. We put a lot of water on the soil. We irrigate it in the traditional way, would be like, we call it manto. It's like covering the whole plantation with water until water goes very deep in the clay, and that gives the plant a lot of autonomy with water to resist the days, the hottest days of the summer, without over marinating the grapes, keeping the fresh of the fruit, keeping the acidity, and lowering the alcohol. So our characteristics there are that the clay, our climate, gives us usually very complex and elegant wines. even at this level, it's an elegant and balanced and rounded wine, without peaks of acidity, without peaks of tannins. I mean, so it's a place of wines of great elegance. That I would say, I would describe it that way.
So is clay typical for Mendoza? And for the folks at home, we're going to move on to the Cabernet Sauvignon. So Mendoza, it's not a small wine growing area. It's a very, very large wine growing area with many, many sub-regions. What are the typical soils that you see through the valley? I mean, or is there a typical soil? Is it more clayey in the north? Is it more gravels in the south? Or is it a whole bunch of glacial till and you really don't know till you drill down because you don't know what the glaciers did?
Well, I'm not an expert on different soils in Mendoza, but it's, as you said, a very big place with many different soils and places. So, but we have a lot of clay in Agrelo. Our place, maybe, I don't know if there is another place in Mendoza with more clay than us. We have, for instance, 6 meters of depth of clay, pure clay, before we reach the stones. 6 meters down.
Now, are the vines happy to dig through that before? Like, how long does it take for a vine to reach the stone layer in terms of its root structure? Is it? I imagine it's quite a slow process for a vine to get down that far.
Yes, sure. Well, actually, half of our vineyard is an old, how do you say, parral? It's a pergola. Pergola
vineyards, yeah.
Do you know how to say it?
Yeah, it's an old-fashioned way of training the vines, but yeah, it's a very common one. I really like it.
Yeah. Well, actually, we have our Merlot is in that method of conduction, and it's great for it because it protects it for excessive sun. And the interesting thing is that part of our vineyard is about 75-year-old. So when we made calicatas, or when we cut the soil, trying to see the roots of the plant, we have found roots of our vineyard 3 meters down.
Oh wow!
So I mean, this is a 75-year-old vineyard, no? So they have time to do that. But that's also possible with the irrigation method we use, which is, as I told you, manto. We cover the whole vineyard with water until it goes down.
So is this a part of the world where if you didn't irrigate, then you would really not be able to grow vines? Is it sufficiently dry that irrigation is absolutely necessary?
Yes, actually. If we couldn't do irrigation like some places in France, it wouldn't be possible to have anything in Mendoza, nothing. Not vines, not fruit, nothing.
Mm-hmm. Now, for those at home who aren't perhaps familiar with the pergola method, the advantage of it is that you leave a lot of green growth or leaves over top of the grapes, providing shade, like a pergola. And for grapes that are very, very likely to get sunstruck and burn effectively in the sun, it's really, really essential. The other really interesting thing that I think we touched on is, when we talked about clay, you jumped right into talking about Merlot, which when we think about Bordeaux, always it's the Merlot planted on clay and the Cabernet planted on gravels. I think it's really interesting that those same sorts of principles just translate through no matter where you are in the world. We've got 2 of your Malbecs and 1 of your Cabs. Why don't we talk about the next wine? What does Cabernet Sauvignon mean to you? Why do you like working with it? And is it pleasant to work with, or is it something you have to really look after in the vineyard?
Well, we try to, in the case of Cabernet Sauvignon, the main things we try to develop on the wine, or we try to achieve, are the same concept. Fresh fruit, typical variety, and good acidity. We make some Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc in our land for the Bobo line. There we try to reach more complexity. In this Trapecio line, we try to have a more simple, like liner wine, which cleans your mouth when you are eating something, and maybe it's more simple wine, but I really like in this Cabernet what we found, what we made. I like it very much. Personally, I like it more than Malbec.
Now, I want to talk about that mouth cleaning aspect, something that we've talked about at length. This is actually our 8th straight week of doing these. One of the things that we've talked about over and over and over with wine is the importance of acidity in a wine, and why a wine without it, like Apothic Red, really it just falls flat and it doesn't taste like very much. As a winemaker, do you want to talk us, or the viewers in particular, through the importance of why acid is important in a wine, why a wine without acid is almost not wine at all?
Okay. Well, acidity in wine is something we look and, but from the very beginning, I would say, even in the grape, while the wine is still a grape in the plant before harvesting, if acidity goes down too much or too quickly, the fruit itself gets in some processes of over-maduration, or I would say sobre-maduración, over-maduration. So there are some chemical processes inside the grape where the grape begins kind of eating itself. It gives another kind of wines, not the ones we try to do. So in the grape, before harvesting, acidity plays a very important role. And in Mendoza, in our very hot and desert weather, it goes by the hand with the amount of water we put in the vineyard, and the amount of protection of we give the grape shades in the case of the pergola, or even in the other way, we leave all the leaves to protect the grapes from the excessive sun, and we leave the grass on the floor to protect the grapes from excessive radiation from the soil.
Do you actually do a green harvest during the season? Like, do you go back and cut back leaves, or do you just let the pergola grow as far as it will for the extra protection?
Okay, we try to. I mean, we let the pergola grow as far as it wants. I would say, as long as it keeps some equilibrium. I mean, the plant must be in equilibrium with itself. So we usually say that the plant must be happy and not stressed. So if you are stressed, you don't give your best in work, in life, at home. If the plant is not stressed, if she is happy, she will give us the best. So part of not being stressed is to have not too much sun, just the necessary, not too a lot of water, as many water as she wants. In the desert, you want to have water. Right? So when you reach, or at least our kind of equilibrium in the plant, gives us grapes with very good acidity and very low pH. For instance, the Cabernet Sauvignon, at the moment we harvest it usually goes into the winery with 3.5 pH. I don't know if everybody is familiar with that, but it's a very low pH. It's the lower the pH, the higher the acidity you perceive.
Well, I don't think you have to worry about getting too geeky with people or too nerdy with people. They love it. We had a really, really in-depth conversation with a winemaker last week where we got right down into the nitty-gritty of doing like carbonic maceration, and people absolutely loved it. So if you want to get right into the technical jargon, you go right ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fully encouraged, because for the people who don't want to hear it, they'll tune it out. But there are people who are right here for all of the in-depth knowledge. Let's jump ahead here. I'm going to finish my little glass of Cabernet here. Let's jump into the Finca Trapezio. So I'm going to throw you a couple of questions. Let's talk about the difference between the Vineyard Selection Series and the Finca Trapezio Series. And let's talk about a little bit about Malbec. Is it a blessing and a curse? I know how the Argentine wine explosion in North America affected me. How did it come off in Argentina? How did it go from being, Argentina for us was our 12th biggest selling section to almost overnight it was our biggest section, and we couldn't bring in wine fast enough? How did that play out there? Because I know how it played out here. What was it like being on the other side of that equation?
I'm not sure if I got your question, sorry.
Sorry, about 2015, 2016, when Argentine wine in North America really exploded. It took off. It got bigger than it had ever been. And it happened very quickly. What was that like to be in Argentina when that happened?
Okay. Well, actually, I think that explosion began earlier. I've seen Malbec going faster and faster, maybe 2003, 2005. And well, it was exciting because we were leading some kind of process similar than Australia and New Zealand and South Africa did earlier than us. Even Chile began earlier than us. So it was exciting because it was a whole, I would say, chance to pursue it at that rate of production. So we had to found more Malbecs. At that time, I was not in this project. I was working in a very big winery. So the challenge was to grow at 30 or 35% each year our production.
That's huge. That's
yes.
So much. How do you grow 30% a year? You had to be planting just so much. Or buying, I suppose. But that's just such massive growth.
Those wineries were buying more and more Malbec from other vineyards. So, but even that was a very big challenge. So it was amazing, and it was very interesting because after that we found. Argentina has Malbec as its insignial flag, I would say. So it helped the world to come to know Argentina, and that's important. So a lot of good work was done by the pioneers on this, and after them, many other came before, and good Malbecs are very usual now, I would say.
Do you find that there's a pressure? Because I know that Malbec is not, prior to the big explosion, Malbec wasn't necessarily what Argentina was known for. You have tons of Bonarda, you have lots of Criolla, you have so many different grape varieties that were more traditional. There's actually even quite a bit of mission there. Do you find the immediate popularity and demand for Malbec, I'm sure financially it's a great thing, it pays a lot of bills, but do you find it stifling as a winemaker, the lack of creativity, the demand for just more Malbec?
No. I think Argentina has many other things to give. We are working on other things. I love Bonarda. I especially love, we in our project with Mauro especially love Merlot. We can make huge Merlots in Argentina. And we also love our whites. Argentina can make white wines that could challenge any good white wine in Europe, for instance. No. But I think Malbec opened a huge door, and now there are kind of a lot of new wines to go through that door. To make their own space.
So it's not so much limited to you as kick down the door to the world so that you can show the world what more you can do with everything else.
Yes, sure.
So tell me about the whites. What are you growing? What do you have for white varietals that are exciting and we might start seeing here in Alberta? What are you excited about on your whites program?
Well, we traditionally made from the beginning some Chardonnay.
Mm-hmm.
We have it at our Petit Bobo line. It's a Chardonnay that ferments in half of the production ferments in stainless steel tanks, and the other half on barrels.
Mm-hmm.
Then they are mixed after 3 months of contact with the barrel and the yeast, and that's so far the product we have in your market. But we also developed another Chardonnay, higher end Chardonnay, with a lot of time inside the barrel, and some Chardonnays at the vineyard selection level too. And after some years of doing that, we began experimenting with Sauvignon Blanc. In this case, this is the only varietal we don't have at our vineyard. We buy it from a vineyard in Valle de Uco,
mm-hmm.
Uco Valley. and we began experimenting with it. We liked it, and we also have that Sauvignon Blanc in our brand as Petit Bobo Sauvignon Blanc. And after that, we developed Sauvignon Blanc in the Vineyard Trapecio Vineyard Selection line too.
Beautiful. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, because when most people think Argentine whites, they tend to think of Torrontés. What do you think of Torrontés? What's your take on the grape? Do you make one? Do you not make one? And why?
You're asking me about Toronto wine? Sorry.
Sorry. I'm probably horribly mispronouncing it, but the...
Torrontés.
Torrontés, yes.
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
No, we so far we haven't made some Torrontés for our project, but we like it very much, and there are many interesting things being done under Torrontés line.
Now, I will say, if you're just someone who doesn't really like Torrontés, that's absolutely fine. I want to hear your opinion on it.
I do like.
No, I'm curious, because I personally am not a huge fan, so I wanted to hear kind of what you love about it or what you don't like about it.
I like Torrontés when somebody's able to do it as a fine wine. I mean, with some elegance. If it's too terpenic, maybe it's not what I would like. But I like the smell and the kind of how do you say? How can I express it? Salvage side of the Torrontés.
So it's an aggressive, expressive, big version of it that shows all the sides of the grape.
Okay, that would be.
Now, one thing I'm picking up right away, we got a little distracted with some of the with the talk about whites, which is honestly what I like anyway. I like when we get completely off topic. It's wonderful. I want to talk about the second Malbec here. I'm picking up a great deal, a more body and more power and more richness, but it's not really any more alcohol. How does the wine show so much more richness, so much more power without extra alcohol?
Well, that's also working in the vineyard. I mean, in this case, we've tried to have a similar. We tried to develop a easy to drink wine, but it has to be more complex than the first one we tried, because it is thought to rest 6 months in barrels. So if you are going to put a wine in the barrel, this wine must match with the barrel. I mean, not any wine can stand the time inside the barrel. So in this case, it's a more complex Malbec, but keeping alcohol low, keeping acidity good, and keeping it very drinkable. I mean, not too many tannins, not astringency, without astringency. So we manage it with, how do you say, lower kilograms per hectare or per acre. A little lower, but not too much lower. And sometimes we also perform 2 different harvests at 2 different times. One with the one part of the grapes are harvested before the other in the same plants.
Wonderful. No, I really like that.
So
I'm impressed with how much more powerful this is.
In that way, we keep the good acidity and the first harvest, the simplicity of the first harvest, and in the second one, we put more complexity in the wine.
No, I'm quite enamored with this, and I think looking at the comments, people are quite enamored with it as well. What's your passion with winemaking? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What do you look forward to making more of?
Well, our passion is that we really love the whole process, and taking away the economic processes, which are also necessary to do this,
of course,
banking, and all of that. But we love, with Mauro, to go to the vineyard. We love to think how we are going to, how do you say, podar the plants, to cut the plants, thinking on the next year, how we try to experiment new things every year, things maybe that are not going to finish in the bottle, or in a new product, but sometimes we do some experiments and we are doing many new experiments this year. Sometimes they develop a new product or a new line or a new style. So it's something like playing. I mean, for me, it's not a work. It's like playing with something I like. And the other thing, interesting thing is that we are very in a very close touch with nature. With every year is different. So nature is different every year, and you have to adjust to it. You have to try to follow it. You have to try to sail the wave, different wave each year to guide the process to get the kind of wine you want.
That's a beautiful analogy. Thank you.
It's okay. Thank you very much.
No, that was spectacular. I almost was sad to cut in. That was brilliant. Keep going.
That's the point. I mean, each year surprises you. I mean, sometimes we struggle a lot, but at the end of the way, the wine always surprises you. Always gives you something different, a new wine, a different wine, or better or not better than the year before, but different with its own personality.
Now, I do notice, speaking of things that you can do in the winery, I do notice a more pronounced oak note on the finca. Now, for those of you watching at home, one of the most expensive things in the winemaking process is oak barrels. They are ludicrously expensive, and you only get a half dozen uses out of them. So using oak is quite expensive. Now this, to my palate, shows more oak than the less expensive wines. What type of oak, how long, and what's your philosophy for dealing with oak aging on a wine?
Okay. Well, first of all, we think that oak is not for every wine, and especially oak doesn't have to never overlap the wine. I'm not if I don't know if I am being clear, but
no, that was perfectly clear.
Must kind of respect the wine and complement the wine, complex the wine if you want it to be complex. In the first Malbec and Cabernet we tried, we don't need that complexity. So as you go up in more complex wines, there comes the oak, and the oak gives more complex. Sometimes it gives more volume in the mouth. Sometimes it gives new aromas to the wine. And they always have to match with the wine. I heard somebody clever than me who said that matching the perfect oak with the wine is like matching the perfect perfume with a woman. So not every perfume is for every woman, and not every perfume is for every occasion. So you have to select the oak you like. So it's a kind of trying and trying and trying until you find the wines you like. And other important thing with the barrels is that maybe the most important thing with the barrels, once you have selected the barrels you like, I mean those who match your wine, is how you work with it. I mean, they are very romantic thing. Wine, the barrels are a very romantic thing in a winery, but they are also kind of how would I say, bomba de tiempo. It's a kind of thing that can explode and ruin the wine if you don't care enough on it. Sanitary is all when we talk about barrels. The sanitary status of the grape, the sanitary status of the wine you're going to put in the barrel, and then how you keep sanitary the barrel itself, because the barrel is something that you cannot clean.
No, you can use high pressure steam, and even that doesn't do everything. It'll always be alive.
Yes, sure. And every year I hear about the new technology to clean and disinfect the
and it never
barrel.
Works.
It never works at all. I mean, well, maybe they work something. They have some extent of success, but first thing is how you work with them. So if you work with good care with a barrel, if you come to the winery, I can show you a couple of barrels we still have from the year 2007. So it's been
Thank you so much. Moro, I'm going to throw a question over to you here for a moment now that we have you back. Nice to see you. I have a question. Can you describe the climates of your vineyards? What are you seeing in the vineyards? What makes your particular part of the world unique to the world?
I'm not sure if you're asking Mauro as
I've just got Mauro back on my screen, so I was going to throw a question to him,
okay.
so he wasn't too bored. For those watching at home, if they've been able to see Mauro, I haven't been for the last 30 minutes or close to an hour. So I just got him back on my screen. So Mauro, if you've been sitting there bored, I really apologize. I haven't been able to see you, so I can see you now. So do you want to talk about the climate of the vineyards?
Yeah. First, I'm enjoying very much the lesson of my cousin. He's the perfect teacher. I always learn about him all time in the vineyard, in the winery. Okay. I was thinking and I was reading. I visit Alberta past year, and I feel that we are very, very far each other, but there's some things very similar to join us. For example, we have 1,000 meters over the sea. I see you are Highlands too, there, in that bridge. That's it. Can you hear me?
Just barely, yeah. We've got you. It's kind of in and out on your mic, Mauro. I'm sorry. We can hear Marcello better. We're struggling a little bit with your audio.
¿Tenemos los libres?
No.
Marcello, I'm just going to ask you a quick question here while we figure out Mauro's sound. Carolyn asked, where in the Mendoza region are you? If people, when international travel is available again, if people want to visit, do you have a gift shop? Do you have a wine experience? Going to go on tours? Are you somewhere they can visit?
Yes, there are many tours already. I mean, until this COVID crisis, enotourism was growing fast in Mendoza, and there are many tours. You can buy the tour, or maybe we can help you develop it. Depends on what you want.
Beautiful. Sorry, it might have just been my audio for Mauro, though. Thank you very much for cutting it. You know what? This is our first experience, doing a direct video chat with Argentina. We haven't done one before. So we're learning lessons along the way. Now, I'm not going to ask you gentlemen to stick around because this isn't your wine. We do all of these kits and sets as a set of 4 wines. So we do have a 4th for our guests. But it's not one of yours. It's one of Hector Durgudi's. So we're going to cover that in a minute here with everybody. But if anyone has last-minute questions for our esteemed guests, please ask them now. I would really love to hear some last couple of questions from folks. And after that, I will say goodnight to both of you gentlemen. And thank you again so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for being there.
I'll start with a question if nobody else does. When I assume you're planting new varieties, what are you focusing on for new plantings? What's the new growth direction of Argentina, at least in your view? And either of you can answer that one.
¿Te va, Mauro? Si te escuchan.
Espera, ¿cuáles son las variedades que queremos plantar?
Creo que habla de Argentina en general y capaz que puedes comentar alguna tuya.
Well, if you heard me,
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, I want to say we love the Malbec, we love the Merlot. I'm fanatic from Merlot, but we love so much the Bonarda. For us, it's the next Argentinian grape that's going to get a trophies around the world. We bet very, very strong for the Bonarda. We have an old vineyard from Bonarda, and this year we are going to show you, for us, the best expression that the Bonarda could give us.
Oh, I'm excited for that. We've had a couple of Bonardas in Alberta, not very many. I'm really excited to see it though, because it seems almost reminiscent of like Spanish mentilla. It has this unique, like medium-bodied, high-acid, fresh fruit character that's so pretty. I'm really excited to see new Bonarda.
It's true. In Argentina, the Bonarda is very similar to the Malbec. They are cousins, but the most important is that both Bonarda and Malbec will express very, very well our soil and our climate, our weather. Is a variety that's a vector of the terroir. You understand?
I do, yeah, and so does the rest of the crowd. This is a fun crowd that knows a lot about wine. So yeah, don't be afraid. I said this too much out. Don't be afraid to get technical. We like it.
It's true. We are going to express in our Bonarda all what happened in our soil, in our land. What happened with Marcel and me. That's I guess, the most flexibility grape who could understand everything. Us, the water, the soil, the weather, the birds, the dogs. It's a plastic variety. You understand the meaning?
Yeah, plastic is unchangeable. It reflects everything around it. It shows the terroir. I don't really like the word terroir, but it's a grape that shows what happens to it. It's not like Shiraz that is. I've never done winemaking, but as I understand, Shiraz kind of tastes like Shiraz no matter what you do to it. It's just the same. With Bonarda, it's a grape that, year to year it will change. It will show, if you had a really bad rainstorm in June, it will show up in the final wine. But exactly the same way, if you had perfect conditions the whole year, the wine will shine in a way that a grape that's less plastic, less variable, it won't ever show that way.
Yes,
now, I do have some questions from our commentariat, our wonderful, wonderful viewing audience. First question from Deandra. How old is the vineyard and how old is the winery? And I realize those are very separate questions.
The project started in 2002, 18 years ago. The vineyard come from 54 from past century, have 74 years old. And we plant the new varietals, Malbec, Cabernet Franc, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and 16 years ago. We have a young medium vineyard and an old, very old vineyard. And the Bonarda is from the old vineyard. And we are talking about make young wines from old vineyards. That's the new concept that we are working on.
Well, Bernie, who is our importer for your brands for Alberta, if you're watching, and I assume you're watching, it's kind of your job, we really want the Bonarda here, so start buying that. Don asks, actually let's get to Brad because he was just above Don here. Brad asks, do you make a rosé, and is there any way that we'll ever see a rosé here from you folks?
Yes, we have done 3 years ago. We start to make a new rosé, made it with 85% of Malbec, with 15% of Moscatel de Alejandría.
Ooh.
The Moscatel de Alejandría is a pink grape. It's not white, it's not red, it's a pink grape, very flavored in the mouth and in the nose. And with the Malbec, they made a match, very interesting. But when you smell the wine, you are thinking about maybe a nice wine, fresh, but sweet wine. But when you try the wine, it's very dry. It's a typical dry white rye, but smelling like a lot of flowers, like a Torrontés maybe. So that's a very interesting pink wine, rosé wine that's coming soon to Alberta.
I love it. I can't wait because we're just getting into, well, it's not always warm here. It's very often bitterly cold here, which is why you can't grow grapes at all winter to get winter killed. But yeah, it's just getting to be warm enough. This weekend here is a long weekend. It's a holiday weekend, so people get 3 days off. So this is traditionally it's a weekend to sit out on the patio and drink wine, and rosé would be my recommendation just as we get into the warm part of the year for us. This is not quite the separation between spring and summer, but for a lot of people, this is the last weekend they'll see snow. Next question up. Of your own wines, what is your favorite, and what is your favorite dish to pair it with? And it's a question for both of you.
Our favorite? What?
Your favorite wine that you make, and your favorite food to pair it with.
It's depend the time. It's depend the time of the year. It's depend the people who is with us. For example, we are talking about the pink wine, the rosé, but for me, the vineyard Malbec, cold, very cold, will give you the same perception of fruit and freshness in mouth that maybe could keep the rosé out. I can bring, we said, swimming pool wines. You are in the swimming pool, quiet, relax with the sun.
You sit next to the swimming pool, you drink some wine.
And I drink this wine, this Malbec.
I love it. That's a brilliant answer. Marcello, how about yourself?
Well, I love all of my wines, but as Mauro said, it depends on the moment, it depends on the company, and it depends on the dish you are going to eat. For instance, regarding the wines, we were talking this night. We have been into harvest until a few days ago, so it was hard work, long hours, very hot climate. Now we are beginning to be in the middle of the autumn, but a few days ago we were in a very hot climate. So coming at home late, tired, hot day, first thing I was doing was to take a Trapecio Vineyard Selection Cabernet. I would put 3 or 4 ice in a big cup, put the Cabernet inside, and it was better than a beer, my friend. So that was my afternoon before thinking of what we're going to have for dinner.
You know what? I absolutely love that. I think it's kind of funny. There are people who would say, "Oh no, ice cubes in wine! How terrifying! What an awful thing to do!" And yet, I put ice in my wine sometimes. Everybody I know in the industry, occasionally, it's like, "I want a white wine, but I don't have any cold white wine. Screw it! I'll just put ice in it. It's fine." It's very funny. The only people who take wine too seriously have never worked in wine, and that's why I love talking to wine professionals, because nobody takes it that seriously. It's absolutely wonderful.
That's why I wanted to tell you that.
Carolyn asks, where do you get your clones of Malbec? Where do you get your cuttings? Are you taking them from inside the vineyard, or are you buying them commercially?
Well, now that we already have the plants, to put some new plants where another one is dead, we take the clone, the material, genetic material from our own plants.
Beautiful.
At the beginning, when Mauro began the project and he planted the new varietals, he found some of them in some other vineyards where he liked the wines. For instance, at that time I was working in a huge winery, as I told you, and he liked the Cabernet Franc from that winery. So in that time I contacted him with the agronomist of the other winery, and there we found we could have the genetic material to plant our own Cabernet Franc. So sometimes if you go behind the wine you like, you try to find the material in the vineyards that wine is from.
Beautiful. Next question we've got. Marcella asks,
Yep.
what is your favorite food to serve with Malbec?
I like very much Malbec with our typical Argentinian asado. So like a barbecue for you, I
Okay.
suppose. And especially with meats.
Yeah? It's definitely a red meat sort of wine. Mauro, for you?
For the Malbec,
Yeah.
we in Argentina we said football, Malbec, y asado. It's a phrase.
Trilogy. Like a trilogy.
I was born thinking about football, Malbec, and asado. For us, it's very difficult to separate the Malbec from the asado. But this grape and this wine from Malbec could be shared with a lot of kind of foods. I don't know if we can eat with seafood, but with Italian food, with the pasta, is very, very, very nice to share. With the tomato sauce, with the pizza, I think that the marriage is perfect.
Well, speaking of football, one of our guests wants to ask a controversial question: Messi or Ronaldo?
Messi. there is no question on that.
It's like ask you Malbec or I don't know, Garnacha.
Yeah, I'm quite famously known for my dislike of Garnacha, so Malbec.
Thank you.
Let's run through any more of these questions.
Let me tell you something.
Please, you take the lead.
You have a very common and special wine called Chinook.
We do.
We have the same wind here in Mendoza called Sonda.
Really?
The same.
It
Yeah.
comes through the mountain passes and it absolutely howls at you.
Yeah.
It frost dry because it snow on the mountain. It's the same concept, I guess.
So does it come from the Andes or does it come from the sea?
From the
It
sea.
comes from the Pacific. It comes from the Pacific Sea.
Yeah.
Crosses above Chile and the mountains, and when it comes down in Mendoza, it gets hot and very dry because all the humidity of the air coming from the sea is left as snow in the mountains. That's what
because we
our
are
is.
deserts.
Now, is this? Now I know there's some grapes like Rissan, for example, that are very, very susceptible to wind, and they'll drop fruit if they get too much wind. Does that limit what grapes you're able to grow, or are modern clones of some of the more wind-susceptible grapes good enough that you don't have to worry about that?
On one hand, it's very interesting what you're saying because on one hand, we can have agriculture here, we can live here in this desert because of the snow. The sonda lives in the mountain. That snow becomes ice, and that ice, after the winter, begins melting and is the water we have from rivers. So on one hand, this is the wind that gives us the possibility to live here and to grow pines. And on the other hand, if the sonda shows up the very precise day when the vines are flowering, we can have some problems. Not huge
Basically,
problems.
all the
maybe-
pollen blows away, more or less.
Exactly. So that year, maybe you will have less amount of grapes, fewer production. it wouldn't kill the plant, it wouldn't kill the year, but that year you can have some kind of problem. But at the end of the day, that's the wind we have to thank for the water in Mendoza.
I have a question from someone who asks, how cold does winter get there? And I'll add on to that, does that limit what grape varieties you can plant? So for those watching at home, winter kill is a real thing with grape varieties. It's why you couldn't, among a massive list of different reasons why you couldn't grow grapes here successfully, the big one being our soil is way too rich. It gets too cold in winter, and a lot of vine grapes, they're very susceptible to winter kill or cold kill. They freeze in the ground. How cold does it get there in winter, and what does that change for you in terms of what grape varieties you can grow, or does it never get cold enough that you can worry about winter kill?
Now, if we are talking about winter period, it is not a problem for us because the minimum temperatures in our land could be minus 15 Celsius. Maybe that's, if I am right, 16 Fahrenheit. So it's a very cold temperature, but that same day, during the day, maybe the temperature comes up to 10 or 15 positive. You mean?
Don't worry about Fahrenheit. It's Canada. It's still Celsius here.
Okay, great.
It's not America. It's not a nonsense Fahrenheit business.
Sorry, I didn't want to redo that, but
no, I'm sure you get that all the time.
About Cristiano Ronaldo, but well, I won't take it personally. So the coldest days in winter could be that, maybe minus 10, minus 15. But the very same day, temperature goes up. So we don't have frozen soil here. You mean?
So you don't really have like frost in the soil even in winter.
Maybe we can have some ice on the soil, but the soil itself, 10 centimeters down, it's the same. It doesn't get frozen. So the plant goes perfectly with that. The roots of the plant live. So here in our climate, and with the duration of our winter, which is not maybe more, it doesn't go, it's no more than 3 months in the year of winter. So in 3 months with those temperatures, it is not a problem. Even I can tell you that the lower the temperatures on the winter, the better for the vines.
Why? What makes a cold winter better for vines?
On one hand, because the vines need to accumulate cold. We say that way. It's not exactly, but the sum of how many very cold days you have in the winter gets it kills some how do you say enzymes in the plant, which are the regulators of the plant for the future spring blossoming. So they would blossom better if they have a very cold winter. But even if we say we have cold winters, they are not enough to kill the plant. So the plant is perfectly prepared for our climate.
Now this is a personal question for me because I really despise shoveling snow, which here is a very regular occurrence. You have to shovel off your sidewalks and your driveway and you're everywhere. Does it snow enough there that you have a snow shovel?
It snows in the high mountains, but where we have the plants, maybe 1 or 2 times a year, and maybe we can have, I don't know, best case, 10 centimeters of snow one day. And as soon as the sun comes up, the snow is melt, and it doesn't get so long in the vineyards. I mean.
One last question from our guests before I let you go, and again, thank you so much for doing this. So the plant is resting, Carolyn asks, about how the vine reacts in winter versus summer. What puts a vine into its resting mode? What brings it out of that hibernation? How does the vine's life cycle over winter work?
Okay. Well, in the autumn, the vines read some things from the nature. I mean, from the days, from the climate, especially the temperatures, night temperatures and the day temperatures are kind of sensed by the plants, so they get prepared themselves to get into the winter. Other important thing is when we harvest. Once you take the fruit off the plant, then the plant gets it as a message of they don't have to put more effort in the fruit, in their children. They only have to put their effort for the next cycle. So they begin to produce energetic reserves, and put them in, especially in the roots. After we harvest, it comes a moment when the plant stops growing in the upper part and begins to grow the roots, preparing themselves for the next year. So the energy is put in the roots. The leaves you will see move from green to red and to yellow, and after that, maybe you can have one, how do you say, frozen, when in the morning temperature drops down from 0. Maybe that day the leaves are dead, and that's the moment that the plant gets into the winter's kind of hibernation.
Well, I'll leave you each with one question. Mara, I'll start with you. What should Albertans expect from your winery in the next 12 months? What should we be excited to have coming into the market? What's going to be new? What's going to be different?
The first objective is come back. We start to sell the wines next year with first choice sellers to all Alberta state, and I visit them. I visit Edmonton. I visit Calgary. The objective for this year is to visit you and Lethbridge.
Well, I can come to you in Calgary too. Calgary's not a long drive.
Okay, I will go. And then I want to go to the snow to ski. I'm fanatic from a ski player.
We have so many places for you to ski. Oh, it's going to be so much fun.
I have to visit Banff and now grow with the brand, but a quality work, a commercial work, not in the massive places. We want to work with specialists like you that understand our wines, the Argentinian wines, our philosophy of the wines in our land, and you can communicate all our work, all the work from the soil, from the weather, and together make the communication of the wine. So we said we are going to walk quiet, but always keeping walking. We are thinking about the future 10 years. And this year, the objective is come back.
I love it. Thank you very much. Marcelo, now, every wine industry on earth has a reputation. You know, Napa's expensive. Hungary's emerging. We have so many different things. What myth about Argentine wines would you like to dispel for people? What do you think is untrue that people say about you?
Well, I would think that I'm not sure if I know everything people are saying about us there, so it depends on what you tell me. But one thing I would like to show the world is that we are not only Malbec producers. That's all. And if you hear something different, you tell me, and I can tell you what I think.
No, I think that was what I was looking for. Is it's so much more than Malbec. Thank you both so much for joining us. This has been a ton of fun. Mauro, if you get to Alberta in the next little while, Marcelo as well, if you can join us, I will come to Calgary. If you can come down here in Lethbridge, we'll do an event with you. This was so much fun, and I appreciate you so much. We have one more Malbec to do with our guests, but that's not one of your wines, so I'm not going to ask you to stick around for it. Thank you so much for joining us. This was so much fun.
Thank you very much.
This is a good Friday night.
Everybody.
Cheers.
Excellent. Have a
Cheers,
nice
gentlemen.
weekend.
Thank you again. And good night to both of
Bye-bye.
you. All right, so let us go over to our last one of the evening, the Durguti Malbec. And yes, I realize I try to get through all the wines in 45 minutes and then come back, but most weeks we don't have two gentlemen joining us from Argentina. That's a special occasion, so we are going to break from our usual format. We're going to go up with a different wine. Now, I would have really liked this to be the Bobo wines from these folks, but victim of their own success. The Bobo wines, they only had 24 to 30 bottles in the whole province to sell us, so we couldn't do this for half of you because we sold 76 or 77 kits this week. We couldn't do this for even close to half of you if we'd done that. So we threw this in as kind of a closing wine. This is one of our house imports. This is Durguti. This is made by Pablo and Hector Durguti. And I think you'll get right off the hop, the alcohol is definitely higher on this wine. We are at, oh, come on lads, don't hide it. You legally have to put it on the label. I want to spare you folks me futilely looking for alcohol on the label, because I clearly can't find it, but the nose says the alcohol's higher. I get kind of a root beer, cherry cola thing right off the hop. This is definitely that hotter climate, more commercially oriented Malbec. I'm going to continue looking for the alcohol because I can't. Oh, there it is. 13.8. So it's not that high, but it is definitely a full half point higher than these. And you get this kind of cherry cola, root beer, cream soda note off of it, which is definitely indicative of a little hotter climate, a little hotter growing, a little more alcohol focused style. Now, I'll be perfectly honest, traditionally this is more what we sell in the store, at least historically, although these are definitely more my style of wines personally. This is very much the style of Malbec that people came to. And let's talk a little bit, very briefly, about when Argentina came into the market. You know, Australia came in and it took over the market completely from about 1996 to about 2015. It was almost 20 years of absolute market dominance. And when it fell off, Argentina really just stepped in and said, well, now we're the new top dog. We're now the new wine region that everybody wants and everybody needs. And it was great. I absolutely loved it. But it wasn't carefully made, clean, acid-driven, pretty wines like the Trapezio. It was more wines like this that were a little bit bigger and more close to what the Australians do. So it's very classic in that. Thank you all very much for being so incredibly kind and having such amazing questions for our guests. I think they were both very touched by the quality and the interest of questions that they got. I guess I don't need the stupid earpiece anymore. Our guests are gone. I can finally take that thing out. But yes, Craig, is number 4 sweeter, not as acidic? Yes, this is why we spent so much time talking about acidity with Marcelo. It's so important. Acid by its nature, like you bite into a lime, you bite into a lemon, it's incredibly sour. Acid is sour. It balances out the sweetness. If acid is done correctly in a wine, it's not sour. It's fresh and it's bracing and it balances out the alcohol and the sugar in the wine. It makes the wine more engaging and interesting to drink. This is good. It got 90 points by James Suckling, as it conveniently tells you on the neck of the bottle. But it's made in a very commercial style. Now, I'm not saying it is a bad thing. To my palate, I would rather drink these. But this is the style of wine that really built that Argentine explosion 5 years ago, and it's part of why I put it on the table. These are very, very 2020 wines. They are very modern. They are very cleanly made. They're very delicate. They have interest and acidity and brightness. This is more the style that people really got into when they came out of Australian wines in that time period. So, no, there's nothing wrong with the Durguti at all. It's actually very, very representative of its style, but it's just not what everybody's drinking now. Well, Charisse, your favorite tasting so far? Thank you very much. I realized we had some weird technical difficulties. At one point, I'm told our camera was showing our new cocktail series with me and Mike. That might have been a thing that happened. Oops. Yeah. And none of this Calgary nonsense. No, I realize I misspoke. I don't want to go up and see them. We should have them in the store because that would be so much fun. I really hope that, I know someday we're going to be able to do big tastings in the store again. It's going to be a packed house again, and we're going to be handing out glasses of wine and having so much fun again. Until then, this is our option. When that is an option again, when we can do those again, we will absolutely have Mauro and hopefully Marcelo as well doing these with us because that was so much fun. Carolyn, I'm sorry that I didn't get to your question before our two guests left. Let me quickly rip through these. So many thanks. I really hope that Mauro and Marcelo get back to this and see just how incredibly appreciated that they were, because there's been so many incredibly kind comments. Not about me, because I suck, but about them, because they're great. Let's just run through these. The burn on the back of the throat, could it be acid, tannin, or I'll also introduce alcohol? It depends on the person. This is where wine is very subjective. For some people, that burn on the back of the throat is going to be acidity, especially for novice wine drinkers. For people who come from white wine, where acid is really, really important, and they come into red, I usually associate tannin with being very drying in the mouth, either like drinking really strong tea or exactly the places in your mouth where you feel really dry when you wake up hungover. That's where tannin dries out. When I get that burn at the back of my throat, it tends to be alcohol based. I have, as the market has moved from very, very high alcohol wines slowly and thankfully down to lower alcohol wines, I now find when I drink wine that's 14.6 to 15 alcohol, I start getting a kind of cooling effect, almost like menthol on the back of my tongue. But I also start getting down near my vocal cords and my tonsils, that harsh sharpness from the alcohol. And that's just where I get it. Oh, and Desandra, thank you. That was really incredibly nice of you. Chris, you just signed in, was next week's selection mentioned? No, it wasn't, because they were so amazing. I completely skipped all of my usual promo segments because I had guests from Argentina who were fascinating and wonderful, and I wanted to talk to them more than I wanted to do my usual promo segments. So let's quickly talk about what we have coming up. For beer, this coming Wednesday, we have wheat as a topic. Now, we've previously done lots of stuff with like, this is a profile of this winery, or this is a profile of this. No, we're going to do just a particular ingredient, and we're going to talk about wheat. So we are going to talk about 4 beers. We're going to do the super traditional, ultra, like right down to the Bavarian purity laws of 15 and 16, which if you absolutely force me, I'm going to talk about because I don't really like them. But an absolutely classic German Hefeweizen, and then a modern version of a Hefeweizen that kind of tastes to me like a Dole Whip, just being creamy and pineapple-y and great. The least appreciated but also best 88 beer, the Hologram White, and then following up with a nice dark wheat beer in the Nocturne, which is also a badass name, which I really like. It's very banana and caramel and toast to me, which I really like. For wine next week, I am still hunting a guest speaker. So, if you know a Portuguese winemaker, ask them to join us. That would be nice of you. But I do think I have a line on the fine gentleman who makes the Colonel Reynolds Red. The issue being it's going to be like 3:30 in the morning for them if they join us. For that, we are going to do the Moros Antigos, which is a really, really pretty Vino Verde. 2 wines from the Douro that are very different. This is your typical big, chunky, powerful Douro Red at like 14.5 alcohol. It's big, it's powerful, it smells like Easter lilies, whereas the Tons de Warm is taking that idea and just dialing it back a bit and making it softer. Finally, the Carlos Reynolds Red. Definitely I got shown this, I think in October October last year. And I was really surprised. This is from Alentejo, which is not one of the major regions, at least for export, that we see out of Portugal. It's really interesting, really pretty, and it's a lot lighter. And when I think of Portuguese reds, I think it was coming from the Douro, which is just a big bloody kiln. It's big and it's chunky and it's powerful. This is none of those things. It's like Portuguese Beaujolais, and I love it very much. I think it's going to be really interesting. So that is next week. I think we can call that kind of the formal portion of the tasting. And yeah, Kevin, my life is also built around now the Wednesdays and Fridays, because I do, again, I do kind of do these like, oh, I'm so knowledgeable and I know these so seamlessly, and some of it is baked in knowledge. I've done this for 20 years. A lot of it is, you know, the Monday night and the Tuesday night and even the Wednesday afternoon, about 10 minutes before the cameras go on, I do a lot of research and digging in, and clearly so do our special guests who just bring up Chinooks out of nowhere, which, wow, that was actually pretty incredible. But no, I do a lot of digging into these, and a lot of my week is built around looking into the wineries and talking to winemakers and talking to special guests and trying to find people to talk about the wines. And that's not a complaint. That is so much cooler than anything else I've ever done. I really love doing these for you folks. I think it's incredibly entertaining, and I really love doing it. So, no, like, the prep work for this is just, it's a pleasure. And yes, we're 90 minutes in, and I have no idea where that time went. Grant asks, can we post an image from the camera of the tasting room to my Facebook page that you can use in the Zoom background? I'm going to throw that over to Aaron, who just... Aaron just gave me a really blank look of, oh God, what? I'll let him deal with that. We need to extend an hour or so. No, because I only have so much bladder capacity. The fact is I'm standing here drinking wine for 90 minutes, and you folks can go to the bathroom, but I can't. We already had one bladder emergency at the beer tasting 2 weeks ago, where I had to literally sprint off the camera and just leave the whole thing on Jesse from 88, and just say, here, Jesse, have fun. Ooh, now we're on rankings. Okay, rankings are great. Okay. Okay, I've been saying this for 10 years. The best value in cab is Argentine cab, so I'm going to say the Trapezio cab, the oaked Malbec, the lighter Malbec, and I'm going to finish up with the Duragudi, which that's my own house import. That's a brand that we bring in. They're just better. They're better wines. They just straight out are. So no, that's my ranking. I did also say cocktails. So we had a minor technical glitch where we are introducing a new cocktail series. It is not going to be live. It is going to be shot in cuts, and it is going to be me and Mike. And we are going to be mixing cocktails. It's going to be our cantankerous cocktail hour. In the sense that this hour has about 4.5 minutes once it's edited down. And Mike isn't knocking over shot glasses full of egg whites. Mike. But no, we're making a Pisco Sour, and we're going to see how these go. If we get some interaction, we get some good response, we're going to keep on with them. But we're going to try 3. We're going to do this week, next week, week after. And after that, we'll see how it goes. We don't really know how this is going to look out. Ryan Hitzkebot, exactly. We're going to talk about that in a minute, and that was the word I was searching for and couldn't find. And yeah, I think cab night, a straight cab night, that could be really, really fun. Now we're going to be doing a bit of an Aussie night. I talked to my dad about doing one with him. He's going to come in and do one with me. It will be in either 2 or 3 weeks. We don't know exactly yet what that's going to look like. But yeah, I think we're hitting up on that 90-minute mark, and I want to thank you all very much for joining us. I'll continue to answer questions down down in the comments on the text side. But thank you all very much for joining me tonight. This has been a ton of fun. Thank you again for both Mauro and Marcelo from Finca Trapezio and Bobo for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your May long, and we will see you next week. For the minute, I've been Kyle from Andrew Hilton. Thank you very much, and goodbye.